The crack of a gunshot echoed through the quiet evening air, making Celeste Montgomery flinch as she peered through the dusty window of her small homestead. It wasn't unusual to hear gunfire in Willow Creek, Arizona Territory, 1879, but each loud report sent shivers down her spine, reminding her that she was now alone with 5 children to feed, clothe, and protect in a world that seemed determined to break her. Mama, was that thunder? 6-year-old Emma asked, clutching her rag doll tightly to her chest. Celeste forced a smile, smoothing her daughter's blonde curls. No, sweetheart, just someone hunting, I expect. She turned back to the stew simmering over the fire, stirring it mechanically. The vegetables were few, the meat even scarcer. How much longer could she stretch their dwindling supplies? 10-year-old James looked up from the table where he was mending a fishing line. We need more food, Ma. I could try fishing at dawn tomorrow. That would be helpful, Celeste said, her throat tight with unshed tears. At 10, her eldest son was already shouldering burdens no child should bear. 8-year-old Sarah sat quietly in the corner, teaching 4-year-old twins Lily and Samuel their letters. The twins, at least, seemed oblivious to the dire straits they were in, 6 months since Thomas had died of fever. 6 months of whispers behind her back in town. 6 months of shopkeepers extending less and less credit. 6 months of neighboring ranchers making offers for her land that wouldn't cover a quarter of its worth. They're just waiting for me to fail, she whispered to herself. A knock at the door startled her from her dark thoughts. Instinctively, Celeste reached for the shotgun Thomas had taught her to use. Stay back, she instructed the children, moving cautiously toward the door. Who's there? She called, her voice stronger than she felt. Nathan Reed, madam. I've got your flour and sugar from Jenkins' store. Celeste frowned. She hadn't ordered any supplies, couldn't afford to. She opened the door a crack, shotgun ready, and found herself staring up at a tall man silhouetted against the setting sun. He wore the dusty clothes of a cowhand, his face partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. There must be some mistake, she said firmly. I didn't order anything. The man, Nathan, shifted the heavy sacks in his arms. No mistake, Mrs. Montgomery. I was in town and Jenkins mentioned you hadn't been in for supplies lately. Thought I'd bring these out. His voice was deep but gentle, with a slight drawl that suggested he came from somewhere east of the Mississippi. I can't accept charity, Celeste said, her pride still intact despite everything. Nathan's face emerged from the shadow as he tilted his head. His features were weathered from sun and wind, but his blue eyes held kindness. Not charity, madam. Jenkins said to put it on your account. My account is already overdrawn, she said flatly. Well now, that's between you and Jenkins, isn't it? He smiled slightly. Mind if I set these down? They're getting heavy. Before she could protest further, James appeared at her side. We can take them, mister. Thank you for bringing them all this way. The man's smile widened. You must be James, your ma's right-hand man, I hear. James straightened his shoulders, looking pleased. Yes, sir. Celeste reluctantly stepped aside, allowing Nathan to enter and place the supplies on her small kitchen table. The other children watched with curious eyes. Mr. Reed, I appreciate the gesture, but I can't. Call me Nate, he interrupted. And I understand pride, Mrs. Montgomery, I do. But those little ones need to eat. His eyes swept over the children, his expression softening. Jenkins said you've been making payments regular as clockwork, but maybe not buying enough for a family this size. Celeste felt her cheeks burn. My finances are my business. Yes, madam, they surely are. He removed his hat, revealing thick brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. But I've got a proposition that might help both of us. I hear you've got good grazing land, but not enough hands to work it. And, she crossed her arms defensively. I've been looking for steady work. I'm good with cattle, horses too. Was foreman at the Lazy S until old man Sutton sold to that big outfit from California. His eyes held her steadily. I could help get your place running proper again. I can't pay wages. Room and board for now. Plus a small share of profits once we get things going. He glanced at the children again. And I'm good with young'uns. Had 4 little brothers myself. Celeste studied him suspiciously. Why would you do this? Every other man in this territory is trying to take my land, not help me keep it." Nathan's expression darkened. "I've seen what those corporate ranchers do to family homesteads. It isn't right." He paused. "And maybe I know something about being alone against the odds." Something in his voice, a hint of old pain, made Celeste hesitate. The children were watching the exchange with hopeful expressions. Even little Samuel, usually shy with strangers, was studying Nathan with interest. "1 week," she said finally. "We'll try it for 1 week. The bunkhouse is empty. You can stay there." Relief flashed across his face. "Yes, madam." "You won't regret it." "I might already," she murmured, but extended her hand formally. Celeste Montgomery. His calloused palm enveloped hers, warm and steady. "Nathan Reed, pleased to meet you properly, Mrs. Montgomery. Mama, can Mr. Reed stay for supper?" Sarah asked, her voice tentative but hopeful. Celeste looked at her daughter's eager face, then at the meager stew. Before she could answer, Nathan spoke up. "I appreciate the invitation, but I've got provisions in my saddlebags. In fact," he smiled at the children, "I might have some dried apples and honey to contribute if your ma doesn't mind." 5 pairs of eyes turned to Celeste imploringly. It had been so long since they'd had anything sweet. "Very well," she conceded, unable to deny her children this small joy. "But this doesn't mean anything except neighbors helping neighbors," Nathan finished for her. "That's how folks survive out here, isn't it?" As he headed out to retrieve his saddlebags, Celeste watched through the window as he patted his horse's neck affectionately. The animal, a sturdy bay gelding, nickered softly in response. "He seems nice, Ma," James whispered beside her. Celeste sighed. "Seeming and being are different things, James. We'll see what kind of man Mr. Reed truly is." "Nathan," Emma corrected, grinning up at her mother. "He said to call him Nathan." Celeste couldn't help but smile at her daughter's innocent enthusiasm. "We'll see about that, too." That night, after the children were asleep, Celeste sat at the kitchen table by lantern light, calculating figures in her worn account book. The numbers refused to add up to anything but disaster. She brushed away a tear of frustration, refusing to give in to despair. A soft knock at the door startled her. She found Nathan standing there, hat in hand. "Sorry to disturb you, Mrs. Montgomery. I saw the light and wondered if you might have a moment to discuss what needs doing tomorrow." She hesitated, then nodded. "Come in, Mr. Reed." "Nathan," he corrected gently. "Nathan," she acknowledged. "Coffee, much obliged." As she poured the coffee stretched thin to make it last longer, he settled at the table, his large frame making her kitchen seem smaller. "I took a walk around before dark," he said. "You've got good land here. Thomas had a good eye." The mention of her husband's name from this stranger's lips startled her. "You knew Thomas?" Nathan shook his head. "No, madam, but a man can tell quality when he sees it. This is prime grazing land with good water access. Whoever chose it knew what they were doing." Celeste nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "Thomas worked for the railroad as a surveyor before we married. He knew exactly what to look for. Smart man." Nathan sipped his coffee. "The north pasture fence needs mending. Looks like some of your cattle have wandered." "How many head should you have?" 52, Celeste answered. At least that was the count after Thomas. She couldn't finish. Nathan's eyes showed understanding. "We'll count tomorrow, round up any strays. The barn needs work too, but that can wait. Cattle come first." His practical approach was reassuring. No empty platitudes or condescension, just clear plans for what needed doing. "The children will want to help," she warned. "James especially." Nathan smiled. "Good, boys his age need to feel useful. Sarah too, if she's interested. The little ones can help in ways that keep them safe." Celeste studied him over the rim of her cup. "You said you had brothers." A shadow crossed his face. "Yes, raised them after our parents died. Cholera." "I'm sorry," she said softly. He nodded acknowledgement. "They're grown now. 2 in Kansas farming, one's a school teacher in Missouri, youngest joined the Army. You must be proud." "I am." His smile returned. "They're good men. And you, what brought you west instead of staying with them?" Nathan looked into his coffee as if the answer might be found there. "Some men aren't meant to put down roots, Mrs. Montgomery." "Celeste," she corrected, surprising herself. His eyes met hers, warm with something she couldn't name. "Celeste," he repeated softly. The way he said her name like it was something precious made her heart skip in a way it hadn't in years. Alarmed at her reaction, she stood abruptly. "It's late. We should both get some rest if tomorrow is to be productive." Nathan rose immediately. "Of course, thank you for the coffee." At the door, he paused. "You've done well, keeping things going this long on your own. Not many could have." The simple acknowledgement of her struggle nearly undid her. "Good night, Nathan. Good night, Celeste." As she watched him walk toward the bunkhouse, his silhouette strong against the star-filled sky, Celeste tried to ignore the whisper of hope that had awakened in her heart. Hope was dangerous. Hope could break you when it died. And yet, as she blew out the lantern and checked on her sleeping children one last time, she couldn't quite silence it completely. Dawn broke clear and cool over the Montgomery homestead. Celeste had been up since before first light, stoking the fire, preparing breakfast, and steeling herself for the day ahead. Outside, she heard the rhythmic sound of an axe splitting wood. Nathan had already begun work. James was the first child awake, as always. "Ma, can I go help Mr. Reed?" Celeste nodded. "After breakfast, and it's Nathan, apparently." James grinned. "I like him. He talks to me like I'm not just a kid." One by one, the other children joined them, all chattering excitedly about their new ranch hand. Even Sarah, usually so quiet since her father's death, seemed animated this morning. After a breakfast of cornmeal mush sweetened with a precious spoonful of the honey Nathan had brought, Celeste sent the older children out to help while she kept the twins with her to tend the kitchen garden. Through the window, she watched Nathan patiently showing James how to properly repair fence posts. Her son's face was serious with concentration, nodding at Nathan's instructions. Sarah trailed behind them, carrying tools and a bucket, looking more engaged than she had in months. "Mama, why is your face red?" Lily asked innocently, tugging at her skirt. Celeste touched her cheek, surprised to find it warm. "It's just the sun, sweetheart." But it wasn't the sun making her blush. It was the sight of Nathan Reed, his shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing muscled forearms as he worked alongside her son with an easy camaraderie that Thomas might have shared with James had he lived. By midday, Nathan and the older children had repaired the closest section of fence and located 3 stray calves. They returned to the house hot and dusty, but triumphant. "Those calves would have been coyote food if we hadn't found them," James announced proudly as they washed up for the midday meal. "James spotted their tracks," Nathan added, ruffling the boy's hair. "He's got a good eye." The simple praise made James stand taller. Celeste felt a pang of gratitude mixed with an irrational twinge of jealousy. This man had connected with her son in ways she couldn't, simply by being a man in a world where men's skills were valued differently than women's. The meal was simple beans with salt pork and the last of yesterday's cornbread, but no one complained. Nathan ate heartily, complimenting Celeste's cooking with genuine appreciation. "Best beans I've had since leaving Kentucky," he declared. "Is that where you're from?" Sarah asked shyly. Nathan nodded. "Born and raised near Lexington, horse country. My pa trained thoroughbreds for the racing stables." "Do you know how to race horses?" Emma asked, eyes wide. "I do indeed, Miss Emma. Was a jockey when I was younger and lighter." He winked at her. "Might teach you someday if your ma approves." "Absolutely not," Celeste said firmly, though she couldn't help smiling at Emma's excited expression. "No racing, just riding, properly and safely." "Yes, madam," Nathan agreed, his eyes twinkling. "Safety first always." After the meal, Nathan insisted the children rest during the hottest part of the day while he and Celeste discussed the ranch's most pressing needs. "Your cattle are decent stock, but they could use some new breeding to improve the herd," he explained as they sat on the porch. "The Blackford Ranch over in Pleasant Valley has a bull that might do the trick," Celeste frowned. "Elias Blackford has been trying to buy me out since Thomas died. I doubt he'd be willing to help." "Leave Blackford to me," Nathan said confidently. "Men like him respect straight talk and fair business. Besides, improving your herd benefits the whole territory's reputation for quality beef." "You make it sound so simple." "Not simple, but possible." Nathan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Celeste, this ranch can thrive again." The land is good, the water supply is steady, and you've managed to keep the core of your herd healthy despite everything. That's no small feat. His faith in her abilities warmed something inside her that had been cold for too long. The bank doesn't share your optimism. They've hinted that without a payment soon they'll foreclose. Nathan's expression hardened. How soon? 3 months. She hadn't told anyone this, not even James. Why was she confiding in this man she barely knew? He was quiet for a moment, calculating. We can do it. The cattle drive to Prescott is in 10 weeks. If we can get your herd ready, that's good money right there. The children and I can't manage a drive. You won't have to. His eyes held her steadily. I'll handle it. Have some friends who'll help for a cut of the profits. Why? The question that had been nagging at her since his arrival finally burst forth. Why are you doing all this for us? For me, you could find paid work at any ranch in the territory. Nathan looked out across the land, his profile strong against the afternoon sun. Maybe I'm tired of working for men who see the land as nothing but dollars and cents. Maybe I want to help a family stay together on their own place. He turned to her, his expression earnest. Or maybe I just believe that sometimes folks deserve a fighting chance against the odds. There was more he wasn't saying. She could feel it, but before she could press further, the twins burst onto the porch, their rest time clearly over. Nathan, Nathan, Samuel called, his usual shyness forgotten. James says you know how to catch fish with your hands. Will you show us? Nathan laughed, the serious moment broken. It's called noodling, young man, and it's a fine skill to have, but I think your mama might prefer if we used proper fishing poles for now. Samuel looked disappointed until Nathan added, but I can show you how to set a fishing line that will catch twice as many fish as a regular one. Can we go now? Please, Mama, Lily begged, bouncing on her toes. Celeste hesitated, then nodded. Just be careful near the water. As Nathan led the excited twins toward the creek, Emma and Sarah trailing behind, Celeste felt something shift inside her. For the first time since Thomas's death, she allowed herself to truly hope not just for survival, but for a future where her children might thrive on the land their father had loved. The days settled into a rhythm. Nathan rose before dawn, starting chores before Celeste even had the fire going. By sunup, he had usually chopped wood, checked the nearest cattle, and begun whatever major task needed attention that day. James became his shadow, absorbing every lesson eagerly, while Sarah found her own way to help, often organizing supplies or tending to smaller repairs around the homestead. Emma appointed herself Nathan's special helper with the horses, showing a natural affinity that delighted him. Even the twins contributed, gathering eggs and helping in the garden under Celeste's watchful eye. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The change in the ranch was remarkable. Fences repaired, strays recovered, the barn roof patched. Nathan even fixed the squeaky front door that had been driving Celeste mad for months. More significant was the change in her children. They laughed again. They played. They went to bed tired from honest work instead of worry. James walked taller, Sarah hummed as she worked, and Emma chattered constantly about the gentle mare Nathan was training specially for her, and Celeste. She found herself watching Nathan when he wasn't looking, the way the corner of his eyes crinkled when he smiled. How his hands, rough from work, could be so gentle when showing Samuel how to whittle, or when braiding Sarah's hair one evening when Celeste was busy with accounts. It was dangerous, this growing awareness. Nathan had never indicated he saw her as anything but his employer, a widow with children who needed help. Their conversations, though increasingly comfortable, remained focused on the ranch, the children, the upcoming cattle drive. Until the evening, a thunderstorm rolled in, violent and sudden as they often were in Arizona summers. Celeste had just put the twins to bed when the first crack of lightning struck close enough to shake the small house. Samuel woke immediately, crying out in fear. "It's all right, sweetheart," Celeste soothed, gathering him into her arms. "Just a storm." But Samuel had always been terrified of thunder, and soon his cries had awakened Lily, who joined her twin in tearful distress. Emma appeared in the doorway, her own eyes wide with apprehension as another thunderclap boomed overhead. Ma, the horses, James called from the front room. They'll be spooked. Before Celeste could respond, the door burst open and Nathan rushed in, soaked to the skin. Storm's bad, he reported. Secured the horses, but we should check that he stopped, taking in the scene the frightened children, Celeste trying to comfort two crying twins at once. Without hesitation, he crossed to them, water dripping from his clothes. Hey now, what's all this fuss about? He asked gently, crouching to Samuel's eye level. The thunder's going to get us, Samuel hiccuped between sobs. That old thunder? Nah, Nathan sat on the edge of the bed. You know what thunder really is. It's just the clouds bumping into each other up there. Like when you and Lily run into each other playing tag. Samuel considered this, his crying subsiding slightly. Really, cross my heart. Nathan made the gesture solemnly. And you know what helps when you're scared of thunder? Both twins shook their heads. A good story. Nathan looked at Celeste. If your ma doesn't mind, Celeste nodded, relieved at the distraction. I need to help James check the barn anyway. I've already secured it, Nathan assured her. Everything's battened down, you should stay dry. His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary, concern evident. All of you? Another lightning flash illuminated the room, followed immediately by a tremendous crash of thunder. Samuel launched himself into Nathan's arms while Lily clung to Celeste. How about that story? Emma suggested anxiously, climbing onto the bed beside them. Soon, all three youngest Montgomery children were huddled around Nathan as he began a tale about a magical horse who could outrun lightning. His deep voice, steady and calm, gradually soothed their fears even as the storm raged outside. Celeste left them to check on Sarah, who was anxiously watching the rain lash against her window. Will our garden be ruined, Ma? She asked worriedly. No, sweetheart, the plants need rain, they'll be fine. Celeste sat beside her daughter, brushing her hair back from her forehead. You should try to sleep. Sarah nodded, but her eyes strayed to the doorway where Nathan's voice could be heard, still telling his story. I like having him here, she said quietly. It feels safer. The simple observation pierced Celeste's heart. Her children had been living with fear for so long, fear of hunger, fear of losing their home, fear of being alone in the world. Nathan's presence had eased that burden in ways she hadn't fully appreciated until now. I like having him here too, Celeste admitted softly. Sarah gave her a knowing look that seemed far too mature for her 8 years. He likes being here, Ma, I can tell. Before Celeste could respond to this surprising insight, Nathan appeared in the doorway, a sleeping Samuel in his arms. This little cowboy nodded off mid-story, he explained, his voice low. Emma and Lily too, where shall I put him? His bed is with Lily in the next room, Celeste whispered, rising to lead the way. As Nathan gently laid Samuel in his small bed, his wet sleeve brushed against Celeste's arm, reminding her that he was still soaked from the storm. You need dry clothes, she murmured as they stepped back into the hallway. You'll catch your death, Nathan smiled. I'm tougher than I look. But I should head back to the bunkhouse. In this, Celeste gestured toward the window where rain was still sheeting down, punctuated by flashes of lightning. That's foolish. I've been called worse, he chuckled. Wait here, she instructed, then disappeared into her bedroom, returning moments later with a folded shirt. It was Thomas's, she explained, not meeting his eyes. It should fit well enough for tonight. You can sleep on the settle in the front room. Nathan hesitated, then accepted the shirt with careful hands. Thank you, Celeste. The way he said her name soft, almost reverent, made her look up. His eyes, blue as a summer sky, held something that made her breath catch. I should check on James, she said quickly, breaking the moment. James, it turned out, had fallen asleep at the kitchen table while keeping watch on the storm. Nathan carefully carried him to bed as well, the boy hardly stirring in his exhaustion. Alone in the front room at last, Celeste busied herself laying out blankets on the wooden settle while Nathan changed in the kitchen. When he returned wearing Thomas's shirt, something twisted in her chest, not pain, as she might have expected, but a strange sense of rightness. Thank you, he said again, standing awkwardly in the doorway, for trusting me with your children, with your home. You've earned it, she replied honestly, The storm continued outside, but inside the small house, a different kind of electricity hummed between them. Celeste was achingly aware of his presence, of the breadth of his shoulders beneath her husband's shirt, of the way his hair curled damply at his temples. "I should let you rest," she said, her voice not quite steady. Nathan nodded, but neither of them moved. Rain drummed on the roof, filling the silence between them with its rhythm. "Celeste," he began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with words unusual for a man who always knew what to say to her children. "I want you to know that whatever happens with the ranch, with the cattle drive, I'm here because I want to be, because you and those children," he gestured toward the bedrooms, "you matter to me." The simple declaration hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning she wasn't ready to examine too closely. "Good night, Nathan," she whispered, retreating to the safety of her room before she could say or do something that couldn't be undone. Alone in her bed, listening to the storm gradually subside outside, Celeste acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding. She was falling in love with Nathan Reed. A man who had appeared out of nowhere, who still carried secrets she could sense but couldn't name, who might disappear just as suddenly as he had arrived. A man who made her feel alive again when she'd been merely surviving for so long. Morning brought clear skies and an awkward awareness between them that the children, thankfully, didn't seem to notice. Nathan left early to check for storm damage, taking James with him. When they returned midday, Nathan's expression was grim. "Lightning struck the north pasture," he reported. "Started a small fire before the rain put it out, but it spooked the cattle. They broke through the fence. We're down at least 15 head. Celeste's heart sank. They couldn't afford such a loss, not with the bank payment looming. "We'll find them," Nathan assured her, seeing her distress. "I've sent word to neighboring ranches to keep an eye out. Cattle don't usually wander too far from familiar grazing grounds. And if we don't find them," Nathan's jaw set determinedly, "we will." But 3 days of searching yielded only 7 of the missing cattle. The others had vanished, possibly driven off by rustlers who had taken advantage of the storm's chaos. "We can still make the cattle drive work," Nathan insisted as they sat at the kitchen table that evening, reviewing their options. The children were already in bed, exhausted from helping with the search. "The calves are doing well, and the stock we have is good quality." Celeste rubbed her temples, trying to ward off a headache. "It won't be enough, Nathan, not for the bank payment and winter supplies." Nathan was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, "There's another option. The army's buying horses for the cavalry. Good prices, too. We don't have horses to sell." "I do." His expression was serious. "I've got 8 quality horses at a friend's place near Prescott, been training them special." "They'd fetch enough to make up the difference." Celeste stared at him. "Your horses, Nathan, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "This place, these children, they deserve a chance. You deserve a chance." The warmth of his touch sent a current through her arm, settling somewhere deep in her chest. "Why?" she whispered, the question that had haunted her since his arrival still unanswered. Nathan's eyes held hers steadily. "Because from the moment I rode up to this homestead and saw you standing there with that shotgun, protecting your children with everything you had, I knew you were someone worth fighting for." The simple honesty of his words robbed her of breath. "Nathan." "You don't have to say anything," he continued quickly. "Just let me help, let me be part of this." His hand tightened slightly on hers. "Part of your family, even if just for now, family," the word echoed in her heart. Was that what they had become in these weeks? Nathan and the children certainly had. She'd seen how they looked to him now, how they included him in their games and conversations, how they ran to him with their triumphs and troubles. And Celeste. What was Nathan to her? Everything, whispered her heart. Everything she hadn't dared to hope for again. "All right," she said finally. "We'll try it your way, but the horses stay yours. If when we make enough from the cattle, you'll keep your horses." Nathan smiled, relief evident in his expression. "Stubborn woman," he murmured, but his tone made it sound like praise. "I've had to be," she replied simply. His thumb traced a small circle on the back of her hand, the gesture oddly intimate. "I know, it's one of the things I admire most about you." The air between them thickened with unspoken feelings. Celeste knew she should pull her hand away, maintain the careful distance she'd kept since that stormy night. Instead, she turned her palm up, her fingers curling around his. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything you've done for us." "Celeste," Nathan's voice was rough with emotion. A small voice interrupted from the hallway. "Mama, I had a bad dream." They broke apart as Lily appeared, clutching her rag doll and looking tearful. Celeste composed herself quickly, rising to gather her daughter into her arms. "It's all right, sweetheart, Mama's here." "Is Nathan still here too?" Lily asked sleepily. Nathan stood, smiling gently at the child. "I'm right here, little one. No bad dreams allowed on my watch." Lily reached for him trustingly, and without hesitation, Celeste transferred her daughter to Nathan's strong arms. As he carried Lily back to bed, murmuring soothingly to her, Celeste felt something final click into place in her heart. This was right. This was what her family needed, what she needed. A partner. Someone to share the burdens and the joys. Someone who saw her strength but didn't expect her to be strong every moment. Someone like Nathan Reed. The next weeks passed in a flurry of activity as they prepared for the cattle drive. Nathan's friends, two seasoned cowhands named Miguel and Caleb, arrived to help, camping in the pasture and pitching in with repairs and cattle wrangling. The children adored them immediately, especially Miguel, who told fantastic stories around the campfire each night. The cattle drive to Prescott would take nearly a week, with Nathan, Miguel, and Caleb handling the herd. James had begged to go along, but Celeste had firmly refused, much to her son's disappointment. "Next year," Nathan had promised him, "when you're 11, that's when I went on my first drive." The compromise had satisfied James, especially when Nathan added that he needed him to stay behind and protect the family while they were gone. The evening before their departure, Celeste found herself unusually anxious. She moved around the kitchen preparing food for their journey, checking and rechecking supplies while the children helped pack. "Everything's ready, Celeste," Nathan assured her, coming in from his final check of the herd. "The cattle are in good shape, weather looks favorable." "We'll be back before you know it." Celeste nodded, not trusting her voice. The thought of Nathan leaving, even temporarily, filled her with a dread she couldn't quite explain. What if he didn't come back? What if something happened on the trail? What if, once away from the demands of the ranch and her children, he realized he wanted a different life after all? "Children, go wash up for supper," she instructed. Needing a moment alone with Nathan, once they had scampered off, she turned to him, struggling to find the right words. "Be careful," she said finally, inadequately. Nathan stepped closer, his eyes searching her face. "I will, you know I will. The trail can be dangerous, rustlers, weather, accidents." Her fears tumbled out despite her efforts to contain them. "Celeste." Nathan's hands came to rest on her shoulders, steadying her. "I've been driving cattle since I was 12 years old. Miguel and Caleb are the best hands in the territory. We'll be fine." She nodded, embarrassed by her show of worry. "Of course, You just what?" He prompted gently when she didn't continue. The words she truly wanted to say caught in her throat. "Come back to me, I need you. I think I'm falling in love with you." Instead, she said, "The children will miss you." Nathan's eyes softened, seeing through her evasion. "Only the children." Celeste's heart thundered in her chest. "No," she admitted quietly, "not only the children." Something changed in his expression, a brightening, like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Nathan leaned down until his forehead rested against hers. "I'll come back," he promised, his breath warm against her lips. "To all of you." The sound of children's feet thundering down the hallway forced them apart, the moment suspended but not broken. Throughout supper, their eyes met across the table, speaking what words could not yet say. Later, after the children were settled for the night with special goodbyes to Nathan, he and Celeste stood on the porch in the gathering dusk. Miguel and Caleb had tactfully remained at their campfire, giving them privacy. "I have something for you," Nathan said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a small, carved wooden horse, expertly crafted with flowing mane and tail. "Made it for you these past evenings." Celeste accepted the gift, running her fingers over the smooth lines. "It's beautiful. Thoroughbred," he explained, "like the ones my pa raised." Freedom and grace all in one package. His smile was soft in the fading light. Reminded me of you. Emotion tightened her throat. Nathan, he shook his head gently. No goodbyes, not yet. When I come back, when the cattle are sold and the bank is paid, then we'll talk about what comes next. Celeste nodded, understanding. Until the ranch was secure, until her children's future was assured, nothing else could be considered. Still, as Nathan stepped closer, his hand coming up to cradle her cheek, she knew some things couldn't wait for perfect timing. Celeste, he whispered, her name a prayer on his lips. She rose on tiptoe, her free hand finding his shoulder for balance, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative with newness, then deepened as his arm encircled her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers again. Now that, he murmured, is something to come home to. Celeste laughed softly, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Just come back safely, that's all I ask. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, he promised. The week of the cattle drive was the longest of Celeste's life. She kept the children busy with chores and lessons, trying not to watch the horizon for returning riders. James took his responsibility as temporary man of the house seriously, checking the remaining livestock and helping with repairs Nathan had taught him. Sarah, observant as always, noticed her mother's distraction. Nathan will come back, Ma, she assured her one evening as they sat mending by lamplight. He promised. Celeste smiled at her daughter's certainty. Yes, he did. And when he does, will he stay, for good? Sarah's question held a weight beyond her years. Celeste considered how to answer. Her children had already lost one father. She wouldn't make promises about Nathan that she couldn't keep. That's something Nathan and I will need to discuss, she said carefully. Sarah nodded, seemingly satisfied. I think he will. He looks at you the way Pa used to. The simple observation brought tears to Celeste's eyes. She'd been so focused on survival, on keeping her children fed and housed, that she'd hardly considered what they might notice about her feelings for Nathan or his for her. Would that be all right with you? She asked softly. If Nathan wanted to stay, Sarah didn't hesitate. He makes you smile again, and he taught James to fish properly, and he braids Emma's hair the way she likes, and he doesn't get mad when the twins ask too many questions. She paused. And he looks at all of us like we're his family already. Out of the mouths of babes, Celeste thought, amazed at her daughter's perception. When did you get so wise, Sarah Montgomery? Sarah shrugged, returning to her mending. I watch, I listen, that's all. The expected return date came and went with no sign of Nathan and the others. One day stretched into 2, then 3. Celeste fought rising panic, telling herself that delays were common on cattle drives, that 1,000 innocent reasons could explain their tardiness. On the 4th day, just as she was contemplating riding to Prescott herself to search for them, dust on the horizon announced approaching riders. They're back, James shouted, having appointed himself lookout. Ma, they're coming. The children tumbled out of the house, racing toward the yard gate. Celeste followed more slowly, her heart in her throat. 3 riders approaching, leading packhorses loaded with supplies. Nathan in the lead, his familiar silhouette causing her knees to weaken with relief. As they drew closer, however, she realized something was wrong. Nathan was slumped in his saddle, with Miguel riding close beside him as if ready to catch him should he fall. Nathan's hurt, Ma, James called, his excitement turning to concern. Celeste ran then, reaching the gate just as the riders entered the yard. Nathan's face was pale beneath his tan, a blood-stained bandage visible on his upper arm. What happened? She demanded, fear making her voice sharp. Rustlers, Caleb explained as Miguel helped Nathan dismount. Tried to take the herd 2 days out from Prescott. We fought them off, but Nathan took a bullet. Just a graze, Nathan insisted, though his grimace as he put weight on his feet belied his words. The cattle are fine, all sold, got a good price too. He tried to smile at her, but it was strained with pain. Inside, now, Celeste took charge, supporting him on his uninjured side. James, help Miguel and Caleb with the horses. Sarah, heat water. Emma, get my medicine box from the cupboard. The children scattered to obey as she guided Nathan to her bedroom, the only place with a proper bed where she could tend him. He protested weakly about dirtying her quilt, but she silenced him with a stern look. "Lie down before you fall down, Nathan Reed." He complied, sinking onto her bed with a barely suppressed groan. Celeste cut away his shirt sleeve to reveal a makeshift bandage caked with dried blood. The doctor in Prescott cleaned and stitched it, Nathan explained as she carefully removed the bandage. Said it should heal clean if infection doesn't set in. The wound beneath was angry and red, but the stitches were neat and holding. Celeste gently cleaned around it with the warm water Sarah brought, then applied a poultice of herbs she kept for such purposes. "You could have been killed," she said quietly as she worked, her fear finally finding voice. Nathan's good hand captured hers, stilling her movements. "But I wasn't. I'm right here, Celeste, right where I promised I'd be." She looked up then, meeting his eyes. Despite his pallor and obvious pain, they were clear and steady, filled with an emotion that made her breath catch. "The bank," she said, suddenly remembering the purpose of the cattle drive. "Did we make enough?" Nathan's face relaxed into a genuine smile. "More than enough. The cattle brought top-dollar Army contracts are paying well this year, and I sold 2 of my horses to a cavalry officer for his personal use. Premium prices." He gestured toward his saddlebags, which Miguel had brought in. "It's all there. Enough to pay the bank and see you through winter with plenty to spare." Relief flooded through her, so profound she felt lightheaded. "Thank you," she whispered, inadequate words for what he'd done risking his life to secure her family's future. "Don't thank me yet," Nathan said, his expression turning serious despite his fatigue. "There's something else we need to discuss, something I've been meaning to tell you." Alarm flickered through her. Was this it? Now that the ranch was saved, was he planning to move on? Before he could continue, the children burst into the room, unable to contain their curiosity and concern any longer. "Is Nathan going to be all right?" Emma demanded, her small face pinched with worry. "Are the bad men coming here?" Samuel asked fearfully, clutching his twin's hand. "Did you shoot anyone?" James wanted to know, his expression a mix of excitement and apprehension. Nathan managed a weak laugh. "One question at a time, partners." He shifted to a more upright position, wincing slightly. "Yes, Emma, I'll be fine." "No, Samuel, the rustlers are long gone, probably halfway to Mexico by now. And James, I fired warning shots only. Miguel was the one who winged one of them." This last revelation sent James racing back outside to question Miguel further, while the other children crowded around the bed, full of questions about the cattle drive and Nathan's injury. Celeste watched as he patiently answered each query, his voice growing wearier but his smile never faltering. Even injured, he made time for her children's concerns, treating each one with the same respect and attention he would give an adult. Finally, seeing his exhaustion, she shooed them all out. "Nathan needs rest. You can ask more questions tomorrow." "But where will you sleep, Ma?" Sarah asked practically. If Nathan has your bed, the innocent question brought color to Celeste's cheeks. "I'll manage just fine on the settle," she assured her daughter. When the children had reluctantly departed, Celeste turned back to Nathan. "You should sleep now. Whatever you need to tell me can wait until you're stronger." Nathan caught her hand as she adjusted his blanket. "It's waited long enough," he said firmly, though his voice was rough with fatigue. "Sit down, Celeste, please." She perched on the edge of the bed, anxiety knotting her stomach. "What is it?" Nathan took a deep breath, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his wound. "I haven't been entirely honest with you about why I came here." Celeste's heart sank. She'd known there was more to his story than he'd shared, but part of her had hoped it didn't matter. "I knew Thomas," Nathan continued, his eyes holding her steadily. "We served together in the war the last year of it, anyway. I was just a boy then, lied about my age to enlist. Thomas was older, wiser, saved my life at Chattanooga when I got separated from my unit." Celeste stared at him, stunned. "Thomas never mentioned you." "No reason he should have. It was brief. We were transferred to different regiments after that battle, but I never forgot him. After the war, I drifted west like so many others." Nathan paused, gathering strength. "Last year, I was in Denver when I ran into a mutual acquaintance who mentioned Thomas had settled in Arizona Territory with his wife and children. Had a nice spread," he said, Understanding began to dawn. So you came looking for him, to thank him? Nathan nodded. I'd done well with my horses by then. Thought maybe I could repay the debt somehow. His expression darkened. But when I reached Willow Creek, I learned he'd died months before. The storekeeper Jenkins told me about you, how you were struggling to keep the ranch, how the vultures were circling. So you decided to help us out of obligation to Thomas. The thought hurt more than Celeste wanted to admit. At first, Nathan admitted honestly, I figured I owed him that much, but Celeste, his hand tightened on hers. The moment I saw you standing in that doorway, fierce as a mountain lion protecting her cubs, it became about something else entirely. Hope flickered in her chest, fragile but persistent. What did it become about, Nathan? His eyes, blue as the summer sky, held hers without wavering. About falling in love with the bravest woman I've ever known. About finding a family when I'd given up hope of ever having one again. About wanting, more than anything, to be the man who stands beside you for the rest of our days if you'll have me. Tears blurred Celeste's vision, happiness bubbling up inside her like a spring. You love me, us, with everything I am, Nathan affirmed, his voice rough with emotion. Those children of yours have become as dear to me as if they were my own, and you, Celeste. His free hand came up to cup her cheek. You've become my heart. Celeste turned her face into his palm, letting her tears fall freely now. I thought you might leave once the ranch was saved. Never, he promised fiercely, unless you send me away. She shook her head, smiling through her tears. I couldn't even if I wanted to. The children would mutiny. And what about their mother? Nathan asked softly. What does she want? Celeste leaned down, bringing her face close to his. She wants the man who saw her family not as a burden but as a blessing. The man who taught her son to be proud again, who made her daughters laugh, who showed her twins that storms aren't so frightening after all. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The man who reminded her heart how to love. Nathan's smile was brilliant despite his exhaustion. Is that a yes to a question you haven't properly asked yet? She teased gently. Despite his injury, Nathan struggled to a sitting position. Celeste Montgomery, he said formally, taking both her hands in his, will you do me the very great honor of becoming my wife, of letting me be a father to your children, of building a life together on this land that Thomas loved so well? Yes, Celeste whispered, her heart full to bursting. Yes to all of it. Nathan pulled her close, his kiss sealing the promise between them. When they parted, both were smiling, despite the tears in their eyes. We should tell the children, Celeste said, suddenly eager to share their joy. As if summoned by her words, the bedroom door creaked open, revealing 5 faces peering in with varying degrees of excitement and apprehension. Are you going to marry Nathan, Ma? James asked bluntly, clearly having overheard at least part of their conversation. Celeste laughed, holding out her arms to her children. Come in, all of you, we have something to tell you. They piled onto the bed, careful of Nathan's injury but eager to be close. Samuel immediately climbed into Nathan's lap on his good side while Lily pressed against Celeste. Emma and Sarah sat at the foot of the bed and James stood beside it, trying to look grown up but unable to hide his grin. Your mother has done me the great honor of agreeing to be my wife, Nathan announced, his arm around Samuel, if that's all right with all of you. Does that mean you'll be our pa now? Emma asked hopefully. Nathan's expression softened. I could never replace your father, Emma. He was a good man, a hero who gave me a chance at life long before I met any of you. But yes, I would be your pa in every way that matters if you'll have me. Will we change our name to Reed? Sarah wanted to know, practical as always. That's up to your mother, Nathan deferred, looking at Celeste. She considered this. I think we might be the Reed Montgomery family, to honor both the past and the future. This compromise seemed to satisfy everyone, especially James, who had been most concerned about preserving his father's name. When will you get married? Lily asked, bouncing slightly in her excitement. As soon as Nathan is well enough to stand at the altar without fainting, Celeste said firmly, giving him a look that brooked no argument. And after the harvest is in. That gives us about a month, Nathan calculated, already looking stronger despite his injury. Plenty of time to make this place shine for a proper wedding. The children erupted in excited chatter, planning decorations and speculating about cake. In the midst of the happy chaos, Nathan's eyes found Celeste's over the children's heads. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. She smiled, understanding all he meant by those simple words. "Thank you for trusting me, for loving me, for giving me a family." "Thank you," she whispered back, her heart overflowing with gratitude for this unexpected blessing that had walked into their lives when they needed it most. The following weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Nathan recovered quickly, though Celeste insisted he limit his activities until the wound was fully healed. The children appointed themselves his nursemaids, bringing him books, playing checkers with him, and reporting on ranch activities he couldn't supervise directly. Miguel and Caleb stayed on, helping with the harvest and preparations for winter. When they learned of the upcoming wedding, they insisted on remaining for the celebration before heading south for their usual winter work. Word spread quickly through the small community of Willow Creek. The widow Montgomery was marrying the cowhand who had helped save her ranch. Opinions were mixed. Some approved of Celeste finding security again, while others clucked their tongues at the hasty courtship. "Let them talk," Nathan said when Celeste mentioned the gossip during a quiet evening on the porch. The children were already asleep and they had these precious moments alone. "They don't know what we've built here." "No, they don't," Celeste agreed, leaning against his shoulder. The wooden horse he had carved for her sat on the windowsill inside, a constant reminder of the journey they had taken to find each other. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the October air crisp with the promise of autumn. Reverend Hollister from town would perform the ceremony at the ranch, followed by a celebration with the few friends they had invited. In her bedroom, Celeste smoothed the skirt of her dress, not new, but her best, a deep blue that Nathan had once said matched the sky at dusk. Sarah and Emma had carefully braided wildflowers into her hair, which she wore loose around her shoulders the way Nathan preferred. A knock at the door revealed James, solemn in his Sunday best. "It's time, Ma," he said, offering his arm with careful dignity. "Nathan's waiting." Emotion threatened to overwhelm her, her son so young to bear such responsibility, yet so determined to do his father's duty. "James," she said softly, "your father would be so proud of the young man you're becoming." James nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Pa would like Nathan, I think. He takes care of us the way Pa would want." "Yes," Celeste agreed, taking his arm. "I believe he would." They walked together to the front yard, where a small gathering waited beneath the old oak tree. Sarah, Emma, and the twins stood near the front, all scrubbed and shining in their best clothes. Miguel and Caleb flanked them, looking uncomfortable but pleased in clean shirts. A few neighbors had come, along with Jenkins from the store and his wife, and there was Nathan, standing tall and straight beside Reverend Hollister. He had trimmed his beard and combed his hair, but it was the look in his eyes as he saw her approach that took Celeste's breath away, as if she were the only person in the world, the answer to every question he had ever asked. James led her to Nathan's side, then stepped back to join his siblings. As Nathan took her hands in his, Celeste felt the last pieces of her heart, the broken, scarred pieces she had protected so carefully, finally heal and become whole again. The ceremony was simple and brief. They exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other through all the seasons of life. When Reverend Hollister pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan pulled her close for a kiss that sealed their bond before God and their small community. "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Reed Montgomery," the Reverend announced to applause and cheers from their guests. The celebration that followed was joyful, with music from Miguel's fiddle and dancing in the yard. Even Jenkins, normally so stern behind his store counter, unbent enough to swing his wife in a lively reel. As the afternoon waned, Nathan found Celeste watching the children play a game with Caleb. He slipped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Happy, Mrs. Reed Montgomery," he murmured against her temple. "Completely," she assured him, turning in his embrace to face him. "And you, any regrets about taking on a widow with 5 children?" Nathan's laugh was warm and genuine. "Only that I didn't find you sooner." His expression grew serious. They said the widow with 5 children was too much, in town when I was asking about Thomas, said no man would want such a burden. Anger flickered briefly in Celeste's chest at the callousness of such remarks, but Nathan's next words extinguished it. Fools, all of them, he said softly. They couldn't see that what they called a burden was actually the greatest blessing a man could ask for. A ready-made family, full of love and courage and hope. His hand came up to cradle her cheek. You and these children aren't a burden, Celeste, you're my home. Tears pricked her eyes at the simple truth in his words. And you're ours, she whispered. The answer to prayers I was too afraid to pray. As the sun began to set over their ranch, their home, Nathan and Celeste stood surrounded by their children, their hands linked in a circle of unity. Whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them together, a family forged not just by blood or marriage, but by choice and love and the courage to begin again. Willow Creek buzzed with the news the widow Montgomery wasn't a widow anymore, and those 5 children had a father again. A family that many had written off as doomed had not only survived, but was thriving. She was too much for any sensible man, old Mrs. Parsons still insisted at her quilting circle. 5 children and a failing ranch, recipe for disaster, I said. Jenkins' wife, Nancy, smiled as she stitched her square. Shows what we know, she replied mildly. Seems to me that Nathan Reed saw something the rest of us missed. And what's that? Mrs. Parsons demanded. Nancy thought of the Reed Montgomery family as she'd seen them at the general store just yesterday, the children laughing, Nathan carrying the twins on his shoulders, Celeste's face alight with happiness as she selected fabric for new curtains. A family whole and complete. He saw that love multiplies, Nancy said simply. It doesn't divide. On the ranch, unaware of town gossip, Nathan stood on the newly repaired porch watching his family, for they were truly his now in every way that mattered. James helped him mend tack and learn to track. Sarah kept their home organized with a wisdom beyond her years. Emma had blossomed with the mare he'd trained for her, showing a natural gift with horses that reminded him of his own childhood. And the twins followed him everywhere, Samuel asking endless questions about the stars and weather, Lily collecting flowers and interesting rocks that she insisted he identify, and Celeste, his wife. The word still filled him with wonder. She was the heart of their home, the anchor that had given his drifting life purpose and meaning. Each night as they lay together in the darkness, sharing the day's events and planning for tomorrow, he marveled at the journey that had brought him to her door. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" Celeste asked, joining him on the porch. She slipped her arm around his waist, fitting perfectly against his side as if she had been made to be there. Nathan smiled down at her, his heart full. "Just counting my blessings," he replied, drawing her closer as the Arizona sunset painted their land in gold. "And thanking God that I found my way home."